the PS4 Pro or the PS4 No. There's been a bit of controversy about whether we actually need the PlayStation 4 Pro. First of all, I was always quite sceptical of the PlayStation 4 Pro, and that's largely because I don't really like the whole concept of mid-gen updates. Now, I'm old enough to remember, the Mega Drive 32X and the Mega Drive, Mega CD and all this.
About 70 years ago.
Yeah, back just before electricity was invented. But basically, by releasing mid-gen updates, you tend to fragment an audience. And now I know what's going to be said. People are going to say, but all of the old PS4 games work on the PS4 Pro. Well, yeah, that's true for now. I don't know if that will, whether Sony will just say, hey, you know what, bollocks, we're going to lift that requirement so we start getting PS4 Pro exclusive games. I suspect they will probably do that within a year or so. And if they don't, then there's a problem for PS4 Pro owners, which is why bother buying an updated console that has very slight updates to the base PS4. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, first of all, some games are running worse on the PlayStation 4 Pro than they are on the PlayStation 4 base.
And there's quite a list of them as well, isn't there? There's about 5-6 games, I think, that have been recorded to be running worse on the Pro.
There are indeed at the moment. This is something I would like to hope will be fixed sooner rather than later. But I think the reason for this is due to basically the techniques used to try and make the image look sort of 4K, because that's what the PS4. We'll go on to that point in a moment, because that's basically what the PS4 Pro's raison d'être is. But basically, when you're paying over £100 more for an upgraded console, you would really expect the games to run better in every respect, or at the very least the same. The fact that they're running more slowly suggests to me something quite worrying, and that is the fact that developers are already under a lot of pressure to put good quality games out there that will run well on the PS4, on the Xbox, on the PC. Although quite often they don't bother making games run well on the PC. However, now developers are being asked to make sure the game runs well on the PS4 and the PS4 Pro and the Xbox and the PC. And this list of games that are running worse suggests that basically the developers are either saying, okay, we don't really have time to optimize games for the PS4 Pro, or we don't see the point in optimizing games for the PS4 Pro. Which leads me back to my first point, which is my general objection to mid-gen updates. Would you say that's fair so far?
No, I'd say that's fair. Also, one of the big reported stories recently was the supposed multiplayer advantage for Battlefield 1 for Pro owners.
Yeah, now the reason for that is because, Battlefield 1 is a very graphically intensive game, as you know. We've got a whole load of Battlefield 1 footage that we've got from the PC version, actually, on this website, on our channel. Now, because the PlayStation 4 Pro can run the multiplayer of Battlefield 1 at a higher frame rate than the base PlayStation, this does give players who have this high frame rate a bit of an advantage, because basically you get a few extra frames rendered in which you can see enemies and have the opportunity to aim at them and shoot at them. In an extreme case scenario, you probably wouldn't have a scenario where you walk around the corner and shoot someone before they even see you. That would just be a bit too quick. But basically, if you've got a high frame rate, you do have a small but very tangible advantage. This has been the thing that's been prevalent on the PC, and this is why PC gamers like to basically turn down the graphic settings until they get a rock solid 60 frames per second.
Split seconds of stuff, like milliseconds, but it's enough to make the slightest difference.
Yeah, I know it doesn't look like a lot on paper, but anyone who's played, a few multiplayer games, and I've played more than a few, I've played a ton, it actually does make an absolutely massive difference. There's a reason that pro gamers go out and buy these 140 hertz refresh rate monitors, and that's because it does really make a difference. But the frame rate issue actually leads me on to our next point, and that is the fact that with the PlayStation 4 Pro, everything about it has been geared up to a commitment to 4K as opposed to a commitment to 60 frames per second. And we've got problems with this for a number of reasons. Now, first of all, the PlayStation 4 Pro isn't actually powerful enough to run most games properly, natively, at 4K at a decent frame rate.
I think there's hardly any games are actually, is it one game which is actually running natively at 4K, was it?
I think I heard Elder Scrolls Remastered was running natively at 4K, but Elder Scrolls...
That's an old game.
That is nearly as old as you, that game. I may be exaggerating slightly there, but nevertheless, it's any new game that looks even slightly graphically decent will not be running at native 4K. It uses this sort of weird upscaling technique. I think a lot of games it boosts up to somewhere around the 1440p mark, and then it just upscales it to 4K. And a lot of people are remarking that if they've got a nice big 4K TV, which is the exact audience that Sony is pitching the PS4 Pro at, they're seeing this checkerboarding effect that's caused by the PlayStation hardware up-resing what is a non-native 4K image onto a 4K display.
Which is just bonkers, isn't it?
It's crazy when you've pitched a console at 4K that it can't actually manage 4K. But sorry.
The fact it doesn't have a built-in 4K Blu-ray player as well is just... I mean, I know they're trying to keep costs down, but that's just crazy.
Yeah, I'm really pleased you mentioned that, actually, because this is something that a lot of people have said, oh, well, people don't use 4K players, people use streaming services. I call bullshit on both of those points. First of all, this streaming with 4K services thing, pretty much every single online comparison I've seen of a streaming service such as Netflix or Amazon Prime that streams at 4K and streams at 1080p, because of the compression used on the 4K stream, very few people can actually see a real substantive difference between the two images. Certainly nowhere near the standard you'd get on a 4K Blu-ray. Secondly, the point about people not having Blu-rays, well, I'm going to make it all about me here. I still have Blu-rays, and a lot of people I know still have Blu-rays. You still have Blu-rays, don't you?
Yeah, I've still got Blu-rays.
The reason for that is because when you pay for something on a digital service, sooner or later, that thing will disappear. When you buy something on Blu-ray, you can watch it again and again, as many times as you like, and even if the studio or the publisher or the distributor or whatever goes bust, I will still be able to watch that film on any of my Blu-ray players. So, go on.
Even a media player can't... I mean, maybe they'll update it at a later date, but at the moment it hasn't been updated, so you can watch 4K files on it, which, again, is crazy.
It's really bizarre, this commitment to 4K with hardware that basically can't handle 4K. I just want to talk about the 60 frames per second issue as well. Since this generation has begun, with the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, everybody has spoken about 60 frames per second like it's the holy grail. And the reason for that is that games that run in 60 frames per second do look really, really nice. It adds to the smoothness of the game, it makes them look slicker, it just puts them that step above movies, because movies don't run anywhere near 60 frames per second. A good game running in 60 frames per second is an absolute joy on the eyes. 4K, yes, 4K images look nice, and I saw Gears of War 4 actually running in 4K and 60 frames per second, and that looked beautiful. But given the choice between the two, I would rather have it running at 60 frames per second in 1080p than 4K in 30 frames per second.
Yeah. It'll be interesting as well next year with Xbox Scorpio, because I think it will be full 4K, but I still reckon it will have a lot of the same problems.
I'm not so sure. I mean, I'm going to give Microsoft the benefit of the doubt here, because they've given themselves such a such an extended gap.
Looking at like the mid-gen updates point of view rather than the 4K and 60 frames.
I mean, this is the thing. Microsoft have pinned their flag. They've said this will run true 4K. You know, we're going for 60 frames per second. It will be quite embarrassing for them if they release a console that is just basically an Xbox One Pro. Anyway, guys, do let me know what you think in the comments. Do you prefer 1080p or do you prefer 60 frames per second? Actually, I'm just going to briefly mention an article I saw on Eurogamer today where Digital Foundry criticised Blizzard for their Overwatch update on the PS4 Pro because they didn't up-res the image. They left it at 1080p, but they set it so it had a rock-solid 60 frames per second. They really laid into them. And the comments thread, and I don't often agree with the comments thread on Eurogamer, but this time I did, they were almost unanimous in saying, well, actually, 60 frames per second is far more desirable than 4K.
Yeah.
So anyway, lots more at parallaxlive.com. Do please hit the like and subscribe buttons. That really helps us out. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys in the next stream.